To start with, the term infrastructure was uniformly defined only about till last year. Before that, we had about 8 or 9 definitions of infrastructure in India. So the RBI would define it differently, the IDFC would do it differently, we in Department of Economic Affairs, Finance would define it differently. So finally it was realized that let's get our act together, committees were formed, and now there is a uniform definition of infrastructure for various incentives that you get. You get bonds, you get tax exemptions and stuff like that. The 12th plan, what does it have to say? It says we need about $1 trillion of investment in infrastructure during the 12th plan. And out of that, about 40% should come from the private sector. During the 11th plan, about 37% of total investment came from the private sector. Now, what are the, when I joined the ministry about a year back, earlier I was in Department of Economic Affairs. I joined Ministry of Urban Development last year, about a year back. So obviously you have to do background reading. So I tried to say, okay, tell me what are the, my essential background reading for infrastructure. And 2 reports were sort of highlighted by each and every one. One is, of course, you know them both. Somnath probably wrote some of them. HPEC, that's the high-powered expert committee chaired by Ishwar Ahluwalia. And of course, there was the McKinsey report. And they've gone ahead and given their estimations of requirements of infrastructure for the country. I mean, just to give you throw a figure at you, it's about 39.2 lakh crore at 2008-9 prices for a 20-year period. That's the HPEC report. And give or take a few lakhs here, McKinsey also comes up with its own version of infrastructure, investment requirements for infrastructure. And just to get the institutional picture complete, at the moment we have a high-level committee on financing infrastructure, which was earlier chaired by Dr. Rakesh Mohan, who's gone ahead to greener pastures, and now we've got Dr. Deepak Parekh, who chairs this CFI. And what are the kind of debates we have in that committee? So one strong debate is on how should you finance metros in a country like India? See, an average investment of about 300 to 400 crores per kilometer is required for metros. So within the government, there's a very strong debate. Ministry of Urban Development pushes for government funding, public funding of urban metros. Whereas, I mean, here I can take the name, a couple of other ministries in the government and think tanks talk, no. This should be a public-private partnership. So much money you cannot sink into urban infrastructure, which is elitist and blah, blah, and what have you. So always in every meeting, we have this sort of debate going on. What is the optimal way you should fund urban transport, especially metros in India? We can come to that later, and my colleague here will be talking more about it. So the committee right now, which is standing and doing its work, its term has just been extended till the end of 2013, is the Deepak Parekh committee. But we all know the government, and Deepak Parekh himself will tell you that probably he gave a committee report about 7-8 years back where he talked of all the same things, and even the conclusions, even the suggestions will be more or less the same. But then that's the way it in India sometimes is. I might be slightly cynical, but the more things change, the more they are the same. I mean, and a lot of professors would argue, I mean, I'm quoting from professors including Partha Mukhopadhyay, that all our problems are well diagnosed and reasonably well thought of, but the only paralysis is too much of analysis sitting there. But anyway, that we can debate later. What does the Ministry of Urban Development do? So Ministry of Urban Development, our mandate is, urban development, as you would know, is a state subject. So water supply, sewage, sanitation and things are to be handled by the states. What the central ministry does is sort of nudges the states through financial and other policy advice, through pushing best practices, through pushing reforms, as Deblina was telling you, that the state and the municipal government do their sort of act in a more efficient way. So Ministry of Urban Development, water supply, sewage sanitation, solid waste management, and urban transport, metros. These are our broad mandates. And of course, other things like smart cities and thinking ahead, visioning is all part of our mandate, and we do it day in and day out. Again, to just take on Professor Ramakrishnan's point, every odd day there'll be people from civil society, there'll be intellectuals, there'll be think tanks who will come and make their presentation. So we have an monthly senior officers meeting. Anyone, a technology provider, a civil society organization, GSI, Save the Earth, climate change, anyone who wants to come and make a presentation is welcome. Of course, what normally happens is you tell him you'll get 15 minutes, he ends up getting 5 minutes. So he has to get his act there right, but it's a free and fair discussion all the time. And they come and criticize us very royally, and we all accept it because that's part of the deal. And our secretary himself is a great is a thinking man, and he's always open to ideas. When I told him I'm coming here, some other people might have said, forget it, do your work here, but he said, no, you go ahead and attend this conference. So water supply, sewage, solid waste management, urban transport. The budget of Ministry of Urban Development is about 7,000 crores. Out of that, about 70% we spend on urban transport, that is on metros. This is apart from the additional central assistance which the JNNURM funding. That is, we are providing assistance to the states through a scheme called Additional Central Assistance. That's a huge amount. I think JNNURM 1 was about 60,000 crores. And of course, that's a separate amount. But the budget of the ministry spends about 60 to 70% of resources on urban transport. So that's just a thing to flag how important urban transport is to the functioning of the ministry. All right. Now let's come to what are the problems and what is the sort of big picture. What do you think of when you think of urban infrastructure in India? Obviously the level is abysmal, we all agree. I mean, we all started rooting for urban sort of development, urban infrastructure in a way post 1991. After the economic reforms kicked in 1991 and the economy grew reasonably well at 8 and 9%, people realized that cities are the engines of growth and that they need to be nurtured. And it was only with the coming in of 2005, December 2005, when JNNURM was launched, that a lot of sort of thinking tried to get traction on the ground. Before that, our heart was in rural areas, and if you go by the allocations of the ministries, the allocation for Ministry of Urban Development was really low. So now let me come to why the implementation of our infrastructure projects in urban development are not doing well. Here, of course, I'd like to give my usual, I'm very fond of Joan Robinson's line on, when she came to the Planning Commission, she told us Indians that whatever you say about this country, the opposite is equally true. So these problems are not pan-India. A problem in Patna will be different from a problem in, let's say, Sikkim, and a problem in West Bengal will be different from a problem in Karnataka. So Matt McDonald has done this study on the JNNURM, and they've pointed out that the biggest weakness in the JNNURM was there was not enough emphasis on capacity building. I mean, you can't just take a huge amount of money, throw it at the municipal government, state government, and expect them to absorb it all. So that absorptive capacity, and the technical aspects also. It was almost at one time, it was terrorism by consultants. You throw in a lot of consultants at the state government, the municipalities, these guys don't know what to do with them. They're hovering all around you. I know, so you ask them, go out and dig some earth and fill it and then do it again. And to even manage a consultant, you need a basic level of expertise and knowledge, which is, forget the state and municipalities, it's often not there in the central government also. Let me just tell you about Ministry of Urban Development. At any given point of time, we've got about 20, 30 consultants roaming around our corridors. And there's a technical wing for JNNURM, there's a World Bank. Sorry? Yeah, that's a very valid point. Partha says they are not given reasonably decent office space to sit. But well, that's an occupational hazard. You can't be working in the ministry and get space because as it is, there's a huge resentment of bureaucrats like us about the salaries the consultants get, which is about 7 to 10 times or even more than what we get. And that's an occupational hazard we all go through. But consultants, at the urban municipal level, they come and tell us we have to be trained ourselves. We also have to have the necessary sort of technical and economic skills to manage these consultants well. So what is the most important thing at the municipal and district level? It is the DPR, the detailed project report. The way it works in the government, the DPR is prepared, it's first approved at the state level, then it comes to the center where our technical wing also, the public health engineering committee for water supply and sewage, they'll do it. For urban transport, our urban transport wing will do it. And there's a lot of to and froing there. So guys will come from the states with their DPRs. Our experts will look at it, they'll tweak it a bit, they'll go back, and the lot of negotiations go on. We all know the different kinds of negotiations which go on at this stage in the government. So the capacities of at the urban level have to be built, and our minister and our entire, all the experts and all, including Professor Mathur sitting here, they've all laid out this claim that you have to build capacities. But often people will ask you, build whose capacities? There's very little personnel at the municipal level. There'll be one engineer, as someone was saying, there's only one urban planner, there's half a planner there, 1/3 of a municipal engineer there. So you have to have people on the ground also whose capacities you can build. Otherwise, of course, you go ahead and outsource and go the PPP route, which is also very much on the cards. So lack of capacities, I would say, is the biggest problem in sort of pushing through good infrastructure in India. And out of the plethora of other problems which now come in is first is land acquisition. A solid waste management project will need, say, let's say, need a landfill, or they'll need a plant where to do waste to energy, or water supply augmentation, all urban roads, urban transport, they all need land. So initially the state governments will just go ahead and say, okay, we'll get the land, just give us the money. So we all, in the center also, we know that is the issue, but we also have our constraints. We have to push money out of the door. So we say, okay, we'll sanction the first installment, and then let's see if you get the land. Obviously, that getting that land will take much more than what is required. For the PPP in Mumbai, that's a major issue. The Reliance people were supposed to do the public-private partnership mode for metros. The land issues, the right of way, takes so much time. But you'll be amazed, you would have thought that a company like Reliance would at least look at the model concession agreement nicely and sort of do a good rigorous job of it. But no, that's because India is still growing. You know, the big companies, big corporates in India think, all right, let's have a model concession agreement, let's agree with it. We'll cross our bridges when we come to them. Now, that kind of mentality is there. So the sanctity of the contract, the sanctity of a model concession agreement is something which needs to be developed and is gradually developing, but it needs much more sort of strength. And of course, there are ambitious contractors everywhere who will go ahead and jump. They'll take a road contract, they'll take a water supply contract, and then default midway. And you know, you can't even blacklist them. The Karnataka people regularly tell us, okay, we've taken that earnest money, we've taken that money, but blacklisting them, don't tell us. They are, you know, networked. It's all a question of networked. Yeah. And of course, India, as Gurcharan Das says, you know, India has law and China has order. So whenever a question of infrastructure comes, we compare ourselves with China. Of course, China being China can sort of go ahead and do what it wants. And India is a hugely noisy democracy. And bureaucrats after bureaucrat, advisor after advisor will tell you how much of discussion these days takes place on any policy document, be it the 12th plan document, be it on the National Urban Sanitation Policy, be it on a National Urban Transport Policy, or something we're doing on smart cities. It has to be thrown open on the website. People have to be called in. Everything, each and every, during the Ministry of Finance budgetary processes, each and every suggestion which comes has to be documented and put up to the minister that this is it, why wasn't it done, and why was it done. So it is now, you know, this discussion, this stakeholder participation is very much ingrained, and thank God for that Right to Information Act. A lot of us spend sleepless nights on it. Half the time of a lot of guys are spent on, you know, when was the economic survey first published? What did it say in chapter 3 of that? Or why was this bureaucrat sent on that training? Who are the other people? Any kind of questions can be asked. Very genuine questions also. But I would say about 20% of those questions are not necessarily in the larger sort of public interest. But that's good. That's good for democracy, because you've got wonderful cases otherwise. In UP, in some schools, school uniforms was not given, and the right to information question comes, and the next 5 days it gets the uniform allotted for it. So although we, as bureaucrats, we would crib about it, and the guys who actually handle the questions, we crib, but we know in our heart of hearts this transparency, this right to information is a wonderful thing. And so, and PPPs, public-private partnerships, is the way to go. The 12th plan also says we should, in urban infrastructure, let's go the public-private partnership way, have a lot of stakeholder consultations. And our experience in urban sector has been, in urban transport and solid waste management, these are two sectors more amenable to PPPs, whereas water supply and others, not so much, going by the revenue model. And of course, there's a lot of debate on what should be sort of hived off to private people. Should it just be maintenance, or should it be the entire process and stuff like that, that we can discuss. Somnath, I know, is a very strong censor. He's told me my time is out. So thank you so much. I will take the question.